Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg. And October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and today my hope is that I will bring awareness, help prevent, and encourage early detection and proper treatment of this dreaded disease. I also want to help make the process less frightening. My guest today is Amanda Fletcher, a writer, trainer, and breathwork practitioner with a degree in kinesiology. She is a queer, neurodivergent in recovery with more than 2 decades of experience in the health and wellness industry. As a breast cancer survivor who is now flourishing, Amanda aims to provide a safe and inclusive space for one-on-one and communal healing, both in person and online. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Pat. So
There's
glad
so
to be
much to
here.
cover. I would like to start out with your story about how you discovered that you had breast cancer.
Great. I'm super fidgety and I'm a very divergent thinker also. So I tend to go off on tangents. So I apologize ahead of time.
No
But
problem.
I thank you so much. I was 37 years old. I was working as a trainer at a boutique fitness facility in Venice Beach. I was taking personal clients. I was teaching group fitness. And I was probably in the best shape of my life. I had just gone to a physical, and the doctor at my physical was amazed that I was 37 years old, as if 37 is old, and what great shape I was in. And I had breast implants, so something that I did in college when I was in my 20s. And it's significant. That's a significant point. One day I was pulling my sports bra off and I felt something in my sports bra. And I thought, oh, did I put like a key in there? Is it like a gumdrop? Like what? I don't know. Like it could have been anything. People had their kids around.
Sure,
I was
sure.
always rolling around on the floor. And it turned out that I felt a lump in my left breast. And it was right kind of underneath the armpit. It felt like a hard little marble. And it was sensitive to the touch. And I talked to friends about it. Everyone says, oh, I'm sure it's nothing. I have fibrous breasts too. I had lumps, go get it checked out. I talked to my husband at the time, go get it checked out just to be sure. And went to my GP, and even he was like, I'm sure it's nothing, but let's send you for an ultrasound. And he made the appointment for the next day, which I was kind of like, oh, I hope, like, did they just have a cancellation? Like, it seemed really fast. You know how long we normally wait for these things?
Yes, yes.
And yeah, so I kind of was, kind of suspicious that it was so fast, but also my GP was amazing. Dr. Jeffrey Goldstein, I love you forever. Not accepting new clients, unfortunately. Um, and I went in for, it was a week before my birthday, September like 11th ish, 2011. And I remember sitting in the waiting room, and there were other women in there, and they were all, probably visibly older than me, maybe in their 50s and 60s, waiting for mammograms or the like imaging. And they decided that they wanted to do a biopsy based off the ultrasound. And still kind of not really, raising the alarm. It was just like, we just want to be sure. We just want to be sure. And so the core needle biopsy, if you're not familiar, it's a needle that's like hollow in the center, and they punch into the skin, and that hollowed out piece, they pull it out, and then they test what they pull out. And I was driving to San Diego, and I was talking on the phone with a friend of mine who had a similar test, and it had turned out to be nothing. And she said, well, have you heard from the doctors yet? And I said, no, not yet. And she said, well, that's good. They only call if there's something wrong.
Okay.
And before she kind of just like finished that sentence, and I got a call waiting beep, and it was my GP. And he basically wanted me to come into his office. And I said, I'm on my way to San Diego. Like that heart drop,
Yes,
like
yes.
of the bad news heart drop, where you just know, because why does this person want me to come into the office? And he said, I don't want to give you this news over the phone. And I pulled over, and I was like, just tell me. You have to tell me. Obviously, I have cancer. And he said, yes, it's cancer. And I kind of I went into like survival mode, I guess, and immediately called my husband, who was in a board meeting. And I apparently the doctor had tried to call him because they had a relationship as well. I think it was maybe his GP at the time as well.
Okay.
And he stepped out of the meeting and was like, "What's going on?" And I said, "You have to call Dr. Jeffrey. Like, I have cancer." And it was just this moment of, bless his heart. I am so grateful to this day that I had this person who just like stepped into the role of caretaker, like immediately. And, called the doctor. What do we do now? Immediately was on the phone with Cedars-Sinai, who has the best doctors. What do we have to do? Next steps. And basically I shut down. And just kind of was very much the patient along for the ride.
I want to ask you, when you heard it, was the first response denial or acceptance?
Such a hard question to answer in hindsight, because I think we tell ourselves stories to live, right?
Right.
So I'm a writer also. So like I'm very good at crafting a narrative around, catastrophic events. So I don't think it was denial. I think that it was more of course, because I had people say to me, and like being in the fitness industry, everyone is like a yoga instructor or a personal trainer or a chiropractor, like your wellness professionals are like who you socialize with. And I remember being asked by my friend Mary, who's a chiropractor in Santa Monica, were you so mad? Like, are you so angry? Like, are you so full of rage? And I was like, no, I just felt like, of course, this is happening. And I'll tell you why. I had suffered from an eating disorder for decades, maybe even. And had been in treatment a few years prior, and we had to do art therapy. And the question that we had to kind of produce on the paper was, what would your body say if it could talk to you?
Mm-hmm.
And mine said, fuck you for making me carry you around all these years. And I just immediately went to that image where I was like, I have mistreated myself for so long, for so many reasons, that of course this is happening to me. And I think that, people will say like, and this is not victim blaming. This is not like, I'm not saying cause and effect. Like, if you do this, you're going to have this happen. I think there's so many factors that go into it. But I do really believe, because people will automatically point to like Keith Richards or like Iggy Pop, like how are they healthy and they've been living this way? And, but also, have those gentlemen been living in their purpose? And I think that goes so far towards how healthy we are in mind, body, and spirit. And I was not living in my purpose. It just felt like a natural progression of the way I'd been treating myself.
So you're dispelling that myth that we all talk about, that if you're in wellness, it won't happen to me. If I eat well and I exercise, it doesn't matter that I feel like shit about myself, or I treat other people badly, or I'm not happy. As long as I do the A, B, and C, that you're not going to get sick. You're not going to get an illness. You're going to live long. People are going to respect you.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I think that here's what I think. I think that we can only do what we can do, right? So of course nutrition is important. Of course, food is fuel. And I think we've really lost sight of that in our society for so many reasons. I was just reading something, I think it was the jacket copy for Eat to Live or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically just like in the 50s, we all thought we were going to be living on like food produced, like nutrients. So nothing grown in the ground. Like that was where we were headed, was like, let's stop world hunger by creating food in a lab. Like literally that's how we got here. It's like that we stopped nourishing ourselves through things that were grown in the ground. Like we've totally cut off our connection with nature.
And
so
it
I think
seems to have happened overnight, right? Like from the 40s to the 60s, which is a very short period of time in history, everything changed. Our attitudes toward food, what we thought we should be doing, just was upended, unfortunately. Amanda, your work brings to light how everything we encounter from the time we're born and how we deal with it plays a huge role in our overall well-being. And I think we're getting to that. Why is that? Let's talk about that.
So, like, as we're talking about this whole idea of you can do everything right and still get sick, and I'm going to put the quotes around right, because like I really want us to get away from polarities of like right and wrong, good and bad, because I think those judgments just set us up to feel shame, to feel blame, to feel less than, and I really do believe that those feelings And science is supporting this more and more, that like the emotional weight that we carry can lead to illness. And alters our brain chemistry, alters our cellular chemistry, like everything. And there's more studies every day coming out about the truth that support that truth. Um, think about so I said, of course, because I was misusing alcohol. I was smoking cigarettes. I had, a food issue. I was using food to self-soothe. I was doing a lot of unhealthy activities to manage, my grief, the trauma that I had experienced earlier in my life. And so on the outside, I looked like this person who was very fit, low body fat percentage, muscular, like all these images that have come to mind of like the fit person. But in the background, I was doing all of these very unhealthy activities to cope, right? Because ultimately, I think that the good and bad part of being human is that we have this survival instinct. So we survive against all odds. We'll do whatever we can to survive. And I think sometimes what we do to survive are these like base level coping mechanisms. You drink, you smoke, you don't sleep, you have questionable sexual activity, all these things that can lead us toward illness. And go ahead. What are you
I
gonna
was going to ask you, so did you hide those behaviors from the people around you?
say? So definitely the food, the binging and purging. I think that's like when you have an eating disorder, that's something that happens in isolation.
Yeah.
But the other behaviors, I think that you will, like, it's almost like seeing the wizard behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. It's like if you hang out with these people that that are working in these professions, this health and wellness, fitness, oftentimes, the maintaining that ideal body image or that look of fitness requires you to adopt unhealthy habits. And when you think, prior to us talking here today, we were having a discussion about, what the things that we do to kind of manage the things that have happened to us in our lives. And a lot of times we come to physical fitness as a coping skill because it makes us feel good. It makes us feel better. So the people that kind of really dive into that, and you think about, are often self-medicating something that has happened in their past. So they're using fitness, but they're also using other things. And I kind of go to this idea of like the doctor who's smoking cigarettes on his break, because we're just trying to cope. And I think getting stuck at those low level coping skills often leads to illness. And when you think about like something happens to you, right? Like a traumatic event. What's your response to a traumatic event? You get in a car accident. What happened when you're in the car accident? You freeze up, right? Your whole body goes tense. You're waiting for and then like you're always waiting for the next thing. It's hard for you to get into a car after. You freeze up, you tense, you don't know where the next flow is going to come from. Well, like that kind of, you holding that tension in your body, that fear, that anger, that affects you on a physiological level. So that's the thing that I'm talking about when I say that all of that is being held within your physical self.
So now you're diagnosed with breast cancer. You're beautiful on the outside. I've known Amanda a long time. Beautiful, gorgeous girl. And you have all these unhealthy things you're doing to yourself.
Yeah.
So how did that perfect storm of things coming together unfold? So now you have breast cancer, you have to have treatment, which means you have to address the things you're doing that are
Right.
not healthy for you. So
Yeah.
how'd you fare through that explosion?
Um, I think that things happen gradually. I think that, Hollywood has convinced us that something like this happens and then immediately we're different. And I don't generally think that that's how it works. It's like every journey starts with the first step, and we have 5 steps forward and a few steps back. Going to meet my oncologist or my breast surgeon in Beverly Hills was like a 10 a.m. appointment, I think. And I made Anthony take me to get a martini on the way there because we were a little bit early and we parked at the Beverly Center because I didn't know how to handle it. Right. And so when I had to do PT scan, MRIs, and there was a moment where they thought they saw a spot on my lung.
Mhm.
So because I was a smoker, I'd been smoking since college. And so I went into, they were going to do a lung biopsy, and I was in the machine. They were figuring it out. They gave me an Ativan so that I wasn't freaking out. Like I was just in this place of acceptance where like you don't have a choice, right? So I think people who are diagnosed with cancer are often called brave, or oh, you're so brave, like you're so courageous, like you're a survivor, and it's like as if I had a choice. You know, you don't have a choice. You have to go. You have to go to treatment. You have to do what they say. Like there's nothing brave about just showing up because you don't have a choice. So I didn't end up getting the lung biopsy because they figured that the procedure, the risks associated with the procedure were higher than the possibility that the cancer had metastasized. But they were just going to keep an eye on it. So there's one way for you to stop smoking, right? Is this idea that like potentially now you have either lung cancer or metastasized breast cancer, meaning it has spread. And then also when you go for surgery, they won't operate on you if you're a smoker,
Okay.
because the way that the wound doesn't heal as well, it takes longer. So that was something that I had to do. I had to quit smoking in order to have the surgery because I had a double mastectomy with reconstruction all at the same time. So that kind of happened quite quickly. But with the alcohol, I participated in a study with UCLA prior to completing chemo, and found out through the study that binge drinking and yo-yo dieting were risk factors for breast cancer. And I had done both of those things for a long portion of my life, and I thought, what does it makes you have this kind of like crisis of existence, like who am I going to be now on the other side of cancer? And it happens slowly, it happens quickly, but it does happen. You grieve for the person you used to be, but you become someone new. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop drinking. If there's something concrete I can do for myself, I'm going to give up drinking. And it wasn't a thing where I was like going to stop drinking forever, but it was like, I'm going to try not to drink for a year, and I'm going to see how that makes me feel, what comes up for me, how I shift into this other way of being. And when I quit drinking, my eating disorder kicked up. So I had been okay with that since I've been in treatment, but the binging and purging came back. So I was working at a gym. I was trying to explain to my clients why I had burst blood vessels in my eye from throwing up, and I was making up stories, and I was just not living authentically. Like everything felt like a lie. And being confronted with the mirror, because you work at a gym, you're just staring at yourself like all the time. And so I had to just step back from who I was and really kind of open up my mind to the possibility of who I could be and what that might look like. And I did that largely through 12-step recovery. And it changed my whole outlook on who I am. I know, like, people have a lot to say about AA and 12-step, but for me, it was exactly what I needed.
I think it's a wonderful there's a 12 step for everything, and it's the first
Yeah.
place I send people when they come to me
Yeah.
with anything. I say try that first.
Yeah.
So you have a lot going on at once here.
Yeah.
And were your doctors telling you you absolutely cannot drink or smoke? You will, we did you get the black and white, and um, were you doing it
The
behind their
smoking, yeah,
backs? You know
the
how,
smoke, no, no, no. The smoking for sure was like,
right.
of course, we know we're not supposed to smoke, right? And I think that, it's also something that it's generational. Like I'm a Gen X kid, so everybody was smoking.
Right.
I started smoking in college. It was definitely something I started doing to manage my anxiety. But when you have this need to maintain a physical image, like a certain, like a, perfect physical image, you'll do anything. And I say you, meaning, the collective
Yeah,
you, but I'll
no,
put it on
absolutely.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would do anything not to eat because I couldn't control my desire, my hunger. I had this insatiable hunger that I could not satisfy, and I didn't know what it was. And the only thing that I just thought it was for food. And I think as a nutritionist,
Right.
that like that insatiable hunger is not for food.
It's never about the food.
It's never
Never
about the
about the
food. It's
food.
also not about the alcohol. It's
That's
not about the cigarettes. It's what you are using outside of yourself to manage, what's going on inside. And I think that, 12 step made me realize that for the first time. So that's why and we never talked about alcohol. They never told me not to drink. Actually, my nurse practitioner, when I was doing chemo, was like, please be careful because your liver is already so taxed, processing the chemo drugs that there's nothing left for the alcohol because, like alcohol has to be processed through your liver. So what that means is basically like you have one glass of wine and you're potentially blackout drunk, depending where you're
right.
at in the chemo cycle.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they really, really wanted me to be careful there. And I think for me, it was like a glass of wine just made me relax in a way that, the anti-anxiety meds or whatever they were offering me a prescription of did not do. And I'd never been a pot smoker. Like weed was never my thing. But they were trying to push me in that direction and rather than alcohol, because, alcohol is a carcinogen, right?
Yes. No, it is. It's 100% is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's a depressant. So like I feel like too, it's like and I, I am a very political person. I feel like in this day and age, like we have to be. It's an imperative for like living an informed life. Like we owe that to our kids and future generations, especially as women. And understanding that, this idea of alcohol being acceptable, but like marijuana not being acceptable and like what that means and how that happened, and the effects that it has on us. Doing chemo, anti-anxiety or anti-nausea meds also make you constipated.
Okay.
And like that's something else you're dealing with when you're doing chemo. So like to be able to like switch that out and potentially take a weed gummy, which is going to help you with the nausea and is not going to have those side effects, that the meds they are giving you in the hospital are, why would we not do that? Why is it that this one is vilified and the other one is like a multi-trillion-dollar industry?
Right. It's scary. We're here
Yeah.
with Amanda Fletcher, breast cancer survivor and founder of Halo Holistic Wellness, a safe space for women to flourish in, whether it's hardship, facing a disease, or needing a much needed wellness reset. Amanda, you're telling us things that we can help protect our daughters and young women, how to cope and survive and thrive, and hopefully avoid some of these. We never can get our risk, you can never eradicate a risk. There's always going to be
Right.
some element of risk. But you're talking so much about how the mental health issue plays, a role in this. And so I wanted to get to kind of give us a little overall, mental health and also the mind, body, spirit connection and treating our overall well being, even in wellness, not so much in disease.
Right. So I think that this is something that I've come to since we were also talking about this previously, come to be more aware of since the pandemic.
Right.
Since going into lockdown in March of 2020, I was in this position where my job was very precarious and we didn't know what was going to happen. We're at the point where we were washing our groceries.
Right.
We were, afraid to go outside, like, because there was that level of panic, right? And I was I was working out probably 2 hours a day at that time because I was working from home. I lived by the beach. I'd go for a run on the beach. I might even ride my bike. Like I was just like really prioritizing the workouts in a way that I haven't done since well before being diagnosed with cancer. And realizing that, hey, this is this is how I'm managing my mental health. And I think that we often intuitively as human beings gravitate towards things that help us thrive even when we don't realize it.
Right.
So I think with the exercise, societal norms and pressure had me thinking I was doing this thing because of how it made me look. And intuitively, I think I was attaching myself to those things because of how it made me feel. Like better sleep, elevated serotonin levels, dopamine levels, decreased cortisol levels, um, coping skills,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then because I did already have this kind of, I am very careful when it comes to watching what I'm eating and exercise, because it's, that the obsession with those things is kind of the opposite side of the addiction coin, right? So I'm very careful about that. And I realized too that like I wasn't being fed spiritually by just doing those things. And when I first got sober, I took a breathwork class, and it was the most profound experience I've ever had. And I say that as someone who has done a lot of drugs. I'm 10 years sober, everyone, so I feel like I'm allowed to say this. I'm
Congratulations.
also yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm also Canadian. We do a lot of mushrooms and
Yeah.
smoke a lot of weed. Um, but it was the most profound experience I'd ever had, that I immediately signed up for teacher training. So that was another tool that I had in my toolbox that I started to incorporate more during the pandemic, and realizing that when we lose connection and community, and that this feeling of being unsafe and isolated and alone really kind of affected a lot of us. And I'm an introvert for the most part, so I was okay being home alone, but not knowing what was going to happen. And we were all confronted with this ideas of our own mortality, the mortality of the people we love, the death of our lives as we had known them before. For a lot of people, their careers,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, their finances. I'm thinking about people that ran huge event spaces and like that were hosting weddings, and
Sure.
it's like, and it was a family business that they'd had for generations, and now suddenly it's gone. And like, how do you recover from that, especially after having no business for 2 years? Really dialing into this meditation and understanding how it helped me feel connected, how it helped me kind of understand the passage of time and mortality, and tying it into like my exercise. So I would do like 30 or 40 minutes of exercise and 30 minutes of meditation, and
Mhm.
also 30 minutes of writing. So really like these mind, body, spirit, very concrete mind, body, spirit practices really were helping me kind of cope and have a different experience of this global health issue than maybe others were having, and realizing like, oh my god, like this is what it is, like this is what we need to do, and dialing into meditation as part of our coping mechanism, because who does that anymore? We're always on our phones, we're always like entertained, right? And so just coming to this understanding that like all of this is interconnected. The more I meditated, the more I did breath work, the less I was worried about food, the less I was consumed with that hunger, because that hole in me was feeling satisfied, satiated. Never say that word right. And so like there's something that like it felt like a physical hunger that was being medicated, for lack of a better word, by this, by meditation, by breath, and realizing that we have these skills to kind of heal ourselves at our disposal at all times, and wanting to use them.
What specifically are some ways we as women act out that seem to directly increase our risk of breast cancer?
Right, like I said, the binge drinking,
Right.
yo-yo dieting. I think that we are also caretakers to a fault. We are always worried about everyone else's well-being, and to the detriment of our own. So what does that mean? It means overextending. It means not getting enough sleep. It means not prioritizing our own health. It means making the kids' doctor's appointments, but not making your own.
Right.
It means eating whatever the kids are eating, and if they won't eat healthy food, then you don't eat healthy food. I think about our mothers and how much was just expected of them.
Yes.
You had like my mom had a job. My mom had a full-time job, but she was also expected to clean the house and take care of the kids, and like got no help with any of that. It was just expected. And I think of like, I think that we all perform up to what's expected of us until we don't.
Yeah, well, we never expect to get sick. We never expect anything to happen to
Right.
us because you feel a weird invincibility during that. It's
Right.
like, well, it doesn't matter if I have a cold. Somebody else needs something. So
Right.
now, this is what happens, and then people do get sick with all kinds of conditions. And Does the debilitating side effects and emotional roller coaster of having these diseases prevent women from participating in their recovery? I mean,
Oh, geez. I would say it's different for everyone, right? We're all snowflakes.
right,
But I think that your recovery to some extent is a choice, like how you look at it, but it's also related to resources.
hmm,
As I mentioned, like I had this amazing support system that started with my husband who like took care of everything. Like I didn't
right,
have to worry about anything. Like honestly, I just wrote an essay for Southern California News Group about my diagnosis, and I had to literally like go back through the documents to find out what my diagnosis actually was because I didn't handle any of that. Anthony handled all of that. Like I
right,
just had to get better.
right.
And that's not often anyone's experience.
No, no,
I
it's
lost
very
two
unusual.
friends. Depends on your healthcare. It's like who are your doctors? What kind of healthcare do you have? Is it an HMO? Is it a PPO? I lost my friend Kelly, died from colon cancer. And up to the end, she was fighting her insurance company to cover her chemo treatments.
God,
And that, it's like, again, we only have so much. I think of every human being as a pie, like a pizza or an apple pie. And like the more you have to devote your attention, the more pieces you have to give to, being your own advocate, being on the phone with your house, with your insurance company for hours at a time, worrying about selling your house because you can't make the payments
right.
on drugs that are like multiple thousands of dollars a month. You don't, how do you recover? How do you get better? There's no juice, there's no energy, there's no gas left for your recovery. So I think that depending on your circumstances, depending on your resources, depending on what's happened to you in the past,
Right.
right? It depends what kind of trauma you've dealt with in the past. And we talked about this idea of like um, if something has happened to you in the past and then this triggers like some kind of like internal body feeling, that panic, that fight or flight, you shut down potentially and you can't do the things that you need to do. And if you're not your own advocate in the US, things do not look good for you.
Right. It's a terrible fight, unfortunately.
It is.
Amanda, what's your short list of recommendations for women who are newly diagnosed, currently being treated, who also may be on the other side, finished up? What are some things you recommend just right off the bat for them to help themselves? Let's forget what's going on with anybody else, just to help
Right.
themselves. Yeah.
I actually tried because I do end up on tangents. I actually tried to make some notes about this one,
Yeah.
just so that I wouldn't miss anything. But like I feel like prioritizing self care, self expression, living with purpose, living in awareness, um, letting go, allowing yourself to let go of who you thought you were and what was important and the idea of what's normal and like, what constitutes reality, and allow yourself to explore. Do you want to take an art class? Have you ever wanted to do creative writing? Do you want to try sound baths, cryotherapy, like anything that
Yeah.
you want to try? Like now's the time. What are you going to do with this one precious life that you have? Don't let the parameters of your life before kind of keep you locked into. Don't worry about returning so much to normality,
Right.
which I think again goes to this whole idea of like post COVID living. Like this is the new normal. What does that mean? And how do we exist in that new normal? I definitely think finding a community of survivors that you can talk about your diagnoses with, because the thing about breast cancer is too, like the treatment and the type of cancer, the size of tumor, how long it's been growing, your genetics, how old you are, like so many factors go into what your treatment's going to be, that chances are you're not going to find someone who had the same diagnosis as you and did the same things. But you know what they're going to be able to talk to you about? They're going to be able to talk to you about nausea, stomach upset, foods they couldn't eat, like the nitty gritty of your humanity, like all the things that are happening from, the waist down, your swimsuit area. You're going to be able to talk about those things in a way where you can be completely vulnerable and not worry that you're going to gross anyone out, or like that anyone's going to think that you're weird, because they've all gone through it too. And I think that's so important. And I think that's why, 12 step is so great,
Right.
because it goes back to this idea of experts. Like, who's a better expert than someone who's been there and gone through it? Like, it doesn't mean that you do exactly what they did, but you can commiserate and you understand you're not alone. And I think that's so important as we get better.
Amanda, with that is something I always encourage, and I think you and I should do together, is to tell people to reach out, pick up the phone, make the call, look for the support
Exactly.
group, whatever support group works for you. There isn't one way to do this, but one of the lines in my book is your peers are your best advisors.
Absolutely.
Just being around people who have gone through what you do, you're right. Preferably find someone exactly had your path. No one's probably going to exactly have your
Mm-mm.
path, but someone you
Right.
can share those things with. Something I didn't put in the Q&A and I want to throw in because we have just a few minutes left. Amanda, let's speak to me about your response to the bombardment in the month of October, breast cancer awareness, of all the crap everybody's selling for breast cancer awareness and raising money, and 10% goes to these young, gorgeous models with perfect bodies are selling clothing and jewelry and pajamas and bracelets and slippers, and this will help you with your breast cancer journey. That's the last thing people want to see.
Honestly, yeah, I don't think there's anything, as someone who lived through cancer, it's like every month is breast cancer awareness month. Like,
Mhm.
every time you go to the doctor, everything that happens, like you're someone new, right? And I don't it does just feel like it's a capitalism. It's a capitalistic response to, just like Valentine's Day. What are these holidays? How do we, in like selling merchandise, it's just a way for people to make money. I think that okay, so here are a couple great Instagram accounts.
Okay.
There's one called The Cancer Patient that is amazing for anyone who's going through cancer treatment. It's very dark. It's very much humor for us by us. So it might make people who aren't going through this uncomfortable, but like highly recommend. The Anxiety MD is a doctor out of Vancouver who's wonderful, talking about, how past trauma. And when I say trauma, it's like any situation that makes you feel unsafe. Because when you feel unsafe, what do? You go into fight, flight, or freeze. So you're having that very physical response to trauma, and we don't understand how to get out of it anymore, because society is so different than it was when we developed from an evolutionary perspective. um, AYA-USC is for young folks, adolescents and young adults who've been diagnosed with cancer. They have a lot of resources, groups, trips you can go on, other people you can meet. And then also Angela Trimber, Trimbur. She's an actress and dancer who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's really kind of developed a community around that. But like, I definitely think that like community is the thing that we need, much more than you need to buy a bracelet. If you've got the money to spend, look at what is it, like any kind of crowdfunding for someone who has cancer, and
Hmm.
give them a $5.
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know
Right. That's a much
and like
better.
meditation is my thing. Okay, so like that's it, this idea of like develop an understanding of spirituality, which I feel like we have gotten so far away from in our society, what it means. And
Quick differentiate between spirituality and religion. We always get tripped up with that, and I want people to feel comfortable. Um,
religion is a man-made construct. So people, like, generally dudes, came up with this thing, like this way to explain God and control people or whatever. Spirituality is just the essence of our humanity. So it's the gas, it's like the breath. Like, who are you, Pat? Like, beyond the physical, like, what makes you you? What's the gas? Why are you breathing? That's spirit.
right.
In Latin, spiritus just means breath. So it's an essential elemental part of our humanity.
Interesting. My
Mm-hmm.
guest, Amanda Fletcher, is a healer who brings vast experience and compassion to all those she helps. Do you want to tell us a little bit more detail about your business?
I would love to.
Okay.
So the it's called Halo Holistic Wellness. I believe in combining movement, meditation, and intentional writing as a way to really kind of delve into whole body wellness. I've been a trainer, a breathwork practitioner, and a writer for 25 plus years. I've seen how these different modalities really kind of not just help people cope, but flourish. The breathwork I practice is an active, open mouth, purposeful breath. I took my teacher training with David Elliott, as I mentioned. I do in-person, online, one-on-one group events. I have my first in-person event since the pandemic, in conjunction with Chef Michelle Lanez, is happening October 30th. The series we've called Food Plus Air. If
Mm.
everything is energy, nutrition is energy, food is energy, air is energy, water, sunshine, all of those things. In celebration of Dia de los Muertos, we've all lost people in the last few years, and grief is a very difficult thing to work with, but it's much easier to kind of accept and wrap our minds around when we think of the fact that we live in a system where energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes forms. And would love to see anybody come out to downtown
Okay.
LA for that. Yeah.
And that's October 30th, which is a Sunday.
It's a Sunday morning from 10 to 1 p.m.
Okay,
So
it's
we're going
on
to
my
do
calendar.
movement,
Okay,
meditation. Yeah.
excellent,
And combine menu with that.
excellent. And just people getting really in touch with what works for them.
Yes.
Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today. And in closing, I want to ask you, what do you like about getting older?
Girl, this was the one question where I was like, oh, but honestly, learning who you are. Like, I think that we have, as women, we have so much, and guys, like, because
Yeah.
they also have to fit into, this box of who they're supposed to be. Letting go of this idea of what it means to be a woman, what's feminine, like how do I have to present, and really just kind of digging into like what is it that inspires me, what is my purpose, and a greater understanding of the passage of time and the preciousness of each moment, and forgiveness for others and for yourself for the things that you've done in the past, and this understanding that like we all do the best we can with the tools we have at hand, and sometimes that best looks really bad,
Yeah.
and that's okay, right? And you keep moving on, and the importance of our connection with nature, and just like go outside, start bird watching. Like, I don't know, like I feel like all of the older women I know all of a sudden are totally into birds, which I
Yes,
totally
yes.
love. Yeah, because that's totally me too. But yeah, it's just this, this like the becoming detached from like what society expects of us opens up this realm of like possibility that's very exciting.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And for more
Mm-hmm.
information and to reach out to Amanda Fletcher, go to Halo Holistic Wellness, and everything will be there on the website. And I look forward. I hope to see some of you in the LA area at the event on the 30th.
That
Amanda,
would be
thank you
amazing.
so much, and I wish you the best of everything always.
Oh, the same. Thank you so much, Pat. It was
You're
such a
welcome.
pleasure.
You're welcome. So wonderful to see you. And I'll have you back on again soon. We'll figure out a
Amazing.
time.
All
Okay.
righty. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.